This is a video by Dr. Nash Jocic, PhD. He's got a PhD, this bloke, so you know his information is going to be good, isn't it? It's a guarantee. And the video is called The Only Training Split That Builds Size and Strength, What No One Tells You. So let's have a look.
Everyone is obsessed with training each muscle group twice per week or training full body sessions 3 times per week. But what if I told you that the most effective training split for building muscle, the one that thousands of bodybuilders have used, including myself, with fantastic results, is actually training each muscle group once per week. And this training split will build more muscle and strength than any other approach. So if you're not growing, it's not your intensity, it's your training split. Most guys are doing full body.
Whoa. Yeah, if you're not growing or you're not progressing, it's not because of your intensity. That's not an issue. You know, in any case, it's never an issue. It's always your training split. So just remember that you can go in and train half-assed, put mediocre amount of effort in, put 50% effort in your training sessions, and as long as you've got the right training split, it's a-okay. So don't worry about intensity. No, with this guy's program, you can, you don't have to be intense. You don't have to push yourself. You can just stick to the program and you'll grow. So let's see what else he's got to say.
3 times per week, or push-pull legs 6 times per week, and still spinning their wheels. This is because they are overtraining, under-recovering, and following what some influencers on YouTube are suggesting them to do without any serious progress. The split that I offer is simple. It's 4 or 5 times per week, each muscle trained once. Plenty of rest, high volume, and this is how pros did it, this is how I'm doing it, and this is how all my clients who have fantastic results have been doing in last 40 years. You don't need to spend more time in the gym. You need smarter programming, and you need to remember that more is not better.
Yeah, I agree. More isn't better. It's not about how much you do, volume-wise, in the gym. It's about how hard you train. But I don't think he's saying that that's not the case. He's saying that intensity isn't required as long as you've got the right split and you only train. You train at the right frequency, which is once a week, according to him, which I don't agree with. You can gain on a program where you're training 3 times a week. It just depends how much intensity you're putting into each session. You know, you can go balls out once a week, train once a week, do multiple sets to failure for each exercise, for each body part. And yeah, you can grow on that easily. You can grow on that, but you can't do that 3 times a week because it's just too much for you to recover from. It's not needed, and your body it'll just stop progressing if you try and hammer it with too much frequency. You can train 3 times a week if you moderate your intensity in each of those sessions. You know, if you train a few reps away from failure in each of your exercises, then yeah, you can progress training 3 times a week, training the same exercises, training the same body parts, as long as you moderate your intensity to match your frequency.
Is better. So stick around and I will explain to you in detail how this 4 or 5 times per week training split with training each muscle group once a week actually works and why is the best training split that you can do. I'm Dr. Nash Jocic, former bodybuilding champion. I competed over 40 times. I won 17 titles. I've been training people for over 40 years. I've seen over 3,000 clients, helped them to achieve fantastic results. So why most splits fail? Let's start with full body 3 times per week. Now, imagine you're training full body 3 times per week. So full body in one session. First of all, there'll be too many muscle groups. There are not going to be enough exercises for each muscle group. Therefore, there will not be enough sets, volume, and intensity for each muscle group, it is simply impossible to train 6 muscle groups with high intensity. So if the first 2 you push hard, what about the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th muscle group? They will probably just be an average warm-up training session or something like that. Also, how can you recover if you train every muscle 3 times per week, full body? So this training system is simply...
Well, because you moderate your intensity in each session, that's how you recover. You don't push each set to absolute failure in each session, and that's how you progress. You've got to have more of a programming aspect to your training if you're going to train more often like that, with more frequency, because you're going to have to set out which days you're going to go harder and which days you're going to go a little bit easier. And you're going to have to build in little deloads in there probably to keep progressing, because you can't just take each training session as its standalone thing and just go balls out and just think, yeah, right, I've hit the muscle as hard as I can, now I've just got to wait to recover. It's not as simple as that when you're training with more frequency. It's a lot more programming based. You've got to be a lot more methodical about your training when you're training with more frequency, but it can definitely be done.
Too taxing. It taxes central nervous system too much, burns out your hormones. It's gonna kill your motivation. You're gonna be constantly tired, and you will never progress with this. Yes, you may try in the beginning if you are really, really beginner and you never did anything else. This is the first time in the gym, but this is still not the best, even if you are a beginner. If you're a beginner, you can see my ebook on best training for beginners, and where I explain everything in detail. Now, training muscle twice per week. You might not recover in time, especially if you're training hard and heavy. Yeah, you have heard, oh, Arnold did it, Sergio Oliva did it, other people did it. Yes, they did it, but they didn't do that all year round. They did it 6, 8 weeks, 10 weeks before the show. I also did it like that. But you have to remember that we were all on steroids. And steroids will help you manage through, right, for 8 to 10 weeks, training muscle twice per week. But after that, you have to stop. But if you're a natural lifter, or if you're just interested in muscle growth, you have to stick to training muscle once per week.
Yeah, it's true that steroids increase your recovery capacity, so you can train more often. But it doesn't mean that if you're natural, you can only train once a week and recover from that. It's just not true. You can train twice a week as a natural and recover. Even if you go hard on your sets, you can... I mean, obviously it depends on your genetics, and some people can recover a lot easier than others. But in general, naturals can train twice a week, going hard on your sets. Or at least say once every 4 days, so, twice every bit, so it's a bit, so that... I mean, it's quite well known that protein synthesis is only elevated for, 48 hours or something? 48 to 72 hours or something in a natural. And then it drops. So what's the point in waiting a full week? So I think he's wrong on that. I think a lot of naturals can recover from twice a week training. Going hard on your sets, I think is... I don't know why he's saying that. I think he's just trying to sell his programs.
Push-pull leg system, very popular. A lot of reasoning for that. But let us have a closer look to that. If you do push-pull legs, that means you're going to be training every muscle twice per week. Means 6 sessions per week. Again, as I said, training muscles twice per week is, especially if you're training with high intensity and volume, is going to be impossible to recover and train again.
You don't have to train with high intensity and high volume. Who says you have to do both? You can't do both, as a matter of fact. You can't do You can't train really intensely and with a lot of volume. You can't do both at the same time. You can't train with high volume and a lot of intensity in all your sets, because after a few sets you're going to be lifting basically no weight, so you're not going to be able to do the volume. So it's one or the other, really. There's no reason you can't train twice a week and go to failure in your sets and do just, I don't know, 1 or 2 top sets in each exercise to failure. Why can't you do that? You don't need to do loads of volume and be really intense in your exercises. There's just no need to do that.
In the week. Now, if you train 6 days in a row, it's definitely going to be too much for you. You will never be able to recover. Your central nervous system will be completely overrun. Your hormones will be depleted. You will.
Yeah, if you train 6 days a week, you'll just never recover. Your hormones will be depleted, whatever that means. How do you deplete your hormones? It's not like you've got a stash of hormones that the body delves into, and then once it's gone, it's gone. You're constantly producing testosterone. You're constantly producing your hormones. So you're not going to burn out your hormones. And why he's saying you should train 5 days a week, and that's fine. That's the optimal amount of days that's the optimal amount of days per week to train to make progress. But 6 days a week, no, you'll never make progress like that. Training twice a week with 6 sessions a week is just impossible. According to him, you'll just overtrain and won't make any progress at all. So he's got the magic program. If you want to make progress, just listen to this bloke, apparently, because nothing else works.
Get into overtraining before you know it. So these systems all fail because you're not recovering enough, you're training too often, your muscles, and even if you can manage to do that, intensity is not going to be high enough and volume is not going to be high enough, so you will not be progressing. Now, let me explain the principles behind the training split that I'm proposing for you. There are 4 core ideas behind this system. Number 1 is intensity. You have to train with high intensity. If you're not training with high intensity, forget about growth. It's not going to happen. Nobody ever grew with some low intensity or medium intensity. Intensity has to be high. I explained what it.
It's not as if you're not intense, ultra intense in all your sets, then you're not going to grow. You're never going to build any size. It's just not true at all. There's 2 ways to go about it. You can go the low intensity, extremely high volume approach, and you can get big off that. A lot of pros have got big off that over the years. Many people have got big off basically like the 10 by 10 approach, 10 sets of 10. Maybe not that routine specifically, but basically that sort of approach, just doing insanely high volume with really low weights, just repeat, just repeat the same set at the same weight over and over again to get the volume in. You can grow like that. I mean, personally, I do prefer the high intensity approach just because it's a lot simpler and it just makes sense to me. And why spend an hour and a half in the gym when you can spend half an hour or 40 minutes in the gym and get the same results? It's just more efficient.
Intensity is in my other videos, so don't mix it up with heavy duty, Dorian Yates, high intensity or whatever. No, intensity is something else. High intensity is necessary for growth. Number 2, you need complete recovery. You need to completely recover your muscle before you hit it again. Muscle growth doesn't happen while you're training. Muscle growth happens while you're resting, right? Now, don't be deluded with that idea that muscle is going to start shrinking after 48 or 72 hours. No, it's not true. Muscle is not going to start shrinking. Muscle is not going to start shrinking if you're not training it for a week or 10 days. It's still going to be there. Why would muscle shrink? So it takes much more of inactivity, many more days.
Yeah, that's true. It's not going to start shrinking if you wait a week, but just because it's not shrinking doesn't mean you can't train it again. Doesn't mean it's still growing, you know, for those extra days in the week. Why not get an extra session in there if you can recover from it and benefit from extra progress? You know, makes sense.
In order for the muscle to start shrinking. But if you train muscle once per week, as everybody is doing it, if you just go around and look, consider reality to be your friend, go around, see all these bodybuilders or advanced bodybuilders or professional bodybuilders, and if you see them training, they will all do the same thing. 99% of them will be training each muscle once per week. So how come their muscles are not shrinking, but they're constantly growing? Oh, you might say this is because they take steroids. Not necessarily. My son doesn't take steroids. A lot of my natural clients, obviously, are natural and not taking steroids. And they're all progressing fantastically. You can see them on my website.
I mean, to be honest, your son does sort of look like he's taking something. But, you know, maybe it looks like he might have a tiny bit of gyno, but a little bit of pointiness, but yeah.
Sure, not taking steroids. And they're all progressing fantastically. You can see them on my website. There is no secret there. And they are not training muscle twice per week. God forbid. How can a natural bodybuilder train a muscle twice per week? Unbelievable. So the third idea, core idea behind the training system that I'm proposing is actually high volume. You need to apply high volume. You need enough sets per muscle group in order to grow. For big muscle groups, I suggest 20 sets. So chest, back, legs, shoulders, they require minimum 16, preferably 20 sets in order to stimulate 100% of your growth potential.
Right, okay. So he wants to train with high intensity for, what, 16 to 20 sets per muscle group, per session. You can't do that. You can't. I don't know what his idea of high intensity is. It must be completely different to mine, because there's no way you can do 16 high intensity sets to absolute failure for each muscle group. You'll be lifting nothing by the end of it. By the last few sets, you'll just be, you know, lifting the pink girl weights, and it's just pointless. So he must have a very different idea of what intensity means.
If you do that, you will realize that it will take 3 or 4, sometimes even 5 days simply for muscle soreness to go. There are people who don't experience much muscle soreness, but if they start training more often, they will experience drop in pump, in strength. They're going to have a poor sleep. They're going to get agitated, nervous, simply because overtraining will kick in.